Hello and welcome to the Satori Software webinar, World Marketing Cuts Postage Costs and Improves Mailing Efficiency. I'm Rob Perrin, the Director of Technical Services for Satori Software, and I will be your host today. A couple of housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded and will be available via the blog on satorisoftware.com. On the right-hand side of your screen, you've got a questions box. Feel free to enter questions as the presentation continues. We'll be collecting those questions and answering them at the end. Currently, the webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes. However, in the event of lots of good questions, as we are expecting, we will be happy to stay on beyond that 60-minute end and continue to answer the questions. So stick with us if you can. Our guest today is Joe Radgowski. Joe has been in the mailing industry for 21 years and is currently working for World Marketing in Atlanta. His responsibilities are postage payment, logistics, priority mail open and distribute, full service compliance as well. His areas of expertise are Post-Presort software, mail.dat files, compliance with USPS regulation and EDOC initiatives, software integration with logistics vendors, distribution management of standard and first-class mail. He also has a Bachelor's of Science degree from Drexel University in Operation Management. Welcome, Joe. From Satori Software, our speakers today will be Joe Bailey. Joe is the Director of Monticello Solutions and Industry Relations for Satori Software. He was one of the founding partners in Monticello Software and serves as the Mail.dat Working Group and Mailing Software Developers Group of ID Alliance. In addition, he participates on several MTAC groups in conjunction with the USPS. Finally, Jean Renier from Satori Software. She is our Solutions Engineer. Jean has been in the mailing industry since 2000. She demos Satori Presort and Post-Presort products, assists customers in making changes in Presort and ways to revise their jobs in Monticello to save postage and make the Postal One e-documentation process more efficient. For our agenda today, we have three major sections. We have a live demonstration, the customer interview with World Marketing, and question and answer. Time to hand it over. Joe Bailey, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. So today, Jean Renier is going to do an actual live demonstration of our Post-Presort products. She's going to introduce you to some concepts of how customers most commonly use Post-Presort software to save postage costs and also to improve efficiencies in their mailing operations. Jean's going to show you some things that, as I said, are the most common sorts of things that we see customers doing. Things like updating the piece weight, or updating the mailing date, or in fact, allow you to have more than one mailing date for a given mailing. So what we're doing is we're using the mail.dat data that's produced in your Presort solution. We're bringing that data into our Post-Presort application and letting you work with that data prior to submitting it to Postal One for your full service compliance. Jean's also going to show you how we pre-validate the data prior to you're sending it to Postal One so that you know if there are going to be any errors that you're going to get from Postal One so you can correct them prior to submitting it to Postal One. She's also going to show how you can update lots of data elements automatically as files are actually imported into our system. So for some commonly updated items like the move update date, the permit number, the EDOC sender CRID or customer reference ID, or setting the USPS pickup field. These are fields that you might not be so familiar with, but if you begin to submit files to Postal One, you'll become very familiar with them very quickly. She's then going to show how we can do the Postal One transactions. So actually create the plan transaction or the ready-to-pay transaction or update transactions. In fact, any Postal One transaction through the online interface. And finally, she's going to go into how we can do entry point optimization to save you money if you do drop shipping. So take it away, Jean.
Good afternoon. So MailDB, which I'm showing right now, hopefully you're seeing. Bear with me a moment. I'm trying to get rid of this little box over here. There we go. So MailDB takes what Joe is saying, a mail.dat file with just a series of files that communicate to mailing, and brings it in, and we call it a job. And it has all the information that you had in pre-sorted. It tells you about the mailing, how it was pre-sorted, how your mail was containerized, who's paying postage. All of that information is within the mail.dat. And the good news is that when you're using a post-sort tool like MailDB, you have the ability to make changes to jobs. So why don't I start with just giving you a little layout of the control center and also some of the information that you can see. So when you look at the Postal One dashboard, maybe you've been there, maybe you haven't, but one of the things that you'll always see is the job ID. That job ID is important because it links up your job in MailDB to what's out on Postal One. And when you're sending over a job to your clerk, you want to give them a listing of the job IDs. And if you're drop shipping 8125s, or if you're e-induction, just job IDs. Really depends on your situation. And then the last column, the job name, title, and issue, is also what Postal One sees. It's about mid-screen on the dashboard. It describes your job. So the more descriptive you can be with your job ID and your job name, title, and issue, the better. The job ID is only 8 characters long, so really the job name, title, and issue field is where you can actually spend some time identifying a job, make it easier for you and the clerk to figure out what's going on. We put in here that both the pieces and copies, they're, unless you're periodical firm bundle, your pieces and copies are going to be the same. If you've got firm bundles, your pieces will be less than your copies. And because of that, that's why we show both. We give you the postal weight, so this doesn't include the weight of pallets or trays. We have reports in Postage DB, for example, where you can see what is the weight of each tray and add that tare weight to your net weight to give you gross weight. We have a Postal One column here that's going to change as I create Postal One transactions, and I'll come back to that. The version of the mail.dat specification is something that it will be important to you if you're in e-documentation, because, for example, right now, Postal One accepts 13.1 and 14.1 files. When that switches, and let's say that they move, you need to switch to 14.1, you're not stopped from submitting to Postal One. We can actually change the specification for you unless there's rate category changes that would have an impact. So sometimes you can actually stop from having to go back to pre-sort by making changes within our software. Then we give you the class of the mail, third class. For you, those of you who've been in the mailing industry for a while, we go with the first, second, third, and fourth class, and third class is standard mail. And then we give you the mail shape, or also referred to as the processing category, in this case letters. We want you to know whether or not your job is full service, and it's also important to know whether you have the piece barcode record or the piece detail records. One of the two files is required in order for you to get the full service discount. That's what has your piece intelligent mail barcode that's going to be tracked. When you see an M, that means that you've got a job that has a combination of auto and non-auto mail. So you'll know right away that this job is not getting completely full service discount. If you see an F, then it is. Also notice that it's in red. What we can do within our software, if you don't need to account for spoilages and shortages at the piece level, we can, instead of importing the piece barcode records and piece detail records, which as you get to larger jobs that could be take quite a bit of time, we actually have an option where you can defer import of these records, and we'll link it back up with the Postal One transaction when you create it. The next thing is the intelligent mail barcode on containers. Since you can create sibling containers, you can create pallets within our software, whenever you have something that doesn't have an intelligent mail barcode on a container, pallet, handling unit such as a tray or a sack, we're going to flag you that that's the case. So this would change from all to some, for example. This includes another documentation field for any of you that's out there that's going to be doing co-palletization. There's a field that you populate that lets the consolidator know that these are the containers that are going into the co-pal, and also lets Postal One know the same thing. So these are all things that helps you to know what's happening with a job. Plus, if you go to the bottom of the screen, we have an edit button where I'm not only going to edit some things, but I'm also going to show you some additional detail. If you want to know how many trays you have in a job, help you to order trays, for example, here it shows you that you have 41 foot trays and that you have 293 2-foot trays. If the mail is palletized, if you have mother pallets, which is where you have trays or sacks on a pallet, then you'll see a count where it says pallet T/S. If you had a job that was packages on pallets, flats job, then you would see a count here. So this is a way for you to be able to get a description of your job. Plus we have the header record here as well, where you can find information about who ran the pre-sort. You can modify the job name, title, and issue, but I'm going to show you an even more automated way that you can update fields instead of coming into the job detail. But one thing I am going to show you within the job detail is in the component record. The component record is where you change your piece weight. So if you have a situation where your piece weight is not a significant change, where it's not going to change to over 3.3 ounces, for example, then you can use our software to make that change. And if your weight doesn't change in terms of a rate category, but let's say your pallet ends up being too heavy, don't worry, you can use our software to create sibling pallets. So we don't change the containerization of your mail, so when you make a change of your weight, we're not impacting what's in a tray, we're not impacting what's on in a sack or what's on a pallet. Here, I'll click in the field and hit enter, and then let's change it to 0.0755. Once I exit out of this window, and I'll also, here, what this is showing you is the weight used to be in the mail piece unit 0.0754. And since the component changed, it wants to now change this other mail.dat file to the same weight. You'll want to hit accept all. Then, because of the weight changing, so does the weight of your trays. And again, you could hit accept calc to see one at a time, but I'll click accept all now. And because pallets are in this job, it's also going to change the weight of the mother pallets as well. So now that I've done that, I now have my new weight on my job, and I'm ready to, for example, change mailing dates or to update Postal One fields. So let's talk about, for example, mailing dates. You might have a situation where you know exactly when your mail is going to go out the door. And so instead of having to submit multiple Postal One transactions, you can create just one file that has multiple mailing dates, and it'll produce one statement. Postal One refers to it as an original ready to pay. We refer to it as a pay postage with plan file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into container functions, assign container miscellany, where mailing dates can be set. And I'll just highlight the mail that's going to go out on a given day. This can be done by entry point. You can change your view to containers, whatever way you need. So if you had an entry point that wasn't going out all on the same day, we give you filters so that you can see the mail in different ways. Here I'm just going to pick entry point, and let's see, I'm going to take Charleston and Carroll Stream. And then I'll put in the mailing date. And if anything else needs to change, if you want to put in reservation numbers, if you want to put in your start the clock with the scheduled induction date, if you have a CSA and you need to populate the scheduled container ship date, we have all those fields within this file. Also, if you want to participate in the induction, that's also available here where you can set the indicator. And we let you know whether a site is SB capable or not. Service, it has the scan, the surface visibility to be able to take pallets without an 8125. It's all electronic. When I click OK, it moves down to the bottom. Then I can select my next group of mail and set it to a different mailing date. Then if I want to double check to make sure that I have things set correctly, so if I know the number of copies and I know the weight, by filtering it by mailing date, now I can just double check, oh yes, that's the right number of copies that are going out on the 24th, and here's the right number of copies going out on the 25th, and then I can click OK and finish this up to update those container records. And it's going through and updating both the trays and the pallets with those dates. What's nice now is that I can just submit this to Postal One and create what's called Ready to Pay. I'm going to stop there though and first show you, I took the same job, I copied it, it's all clean for Postal One, but I want you to see what typically happens when people first bring in a job. So let's say we already changed the piece weight, we changed the mailing date, and also I'm going to show you another way to change mailing date is through, after you validate a job, we can use the Postal One field editor. So first I'm going to validate to make sure that this file has all the Postal One fields populated. So I'll click on Validate for Postal One Pay Postage. What this allows me to do is determine, is there anything that would stop the job all the way through paying postage on it? So in the screen, first it gives me information about the job, and then it goes to each of the mail.dat files and lets me know for each of the different segments. If I had more than one segment, then I'd see 001, and then I'd see another line for 002, just letting me know what's missing. So for example, I'm missing the move update date. I have a job that's NCO8 and the move update is missing. Also, I'm missing the eDoc sender CRID, which is important because that's how Postal One knows that you, as the mail preparer, are the one who's submitting to Postal One. There's exceptions to that, but I won't go into that today. The next thing is that we look at whether or not your container summary records are updated so that when you submit for a statement, you have the right information populated. So in this particular job, the mailing date is missing. Also, there's a field called the USPS pickup that needs to be populated as well. And what we do is in this log, we list every single container because there could be situations where it's not all the containers that are a problem. So you just need to update some. I'm going to close this out and come back here. And the first thing I'm going to do is go back to Edit Detail and change the move update date. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. And the move update date, if you weren't the ones that did the move update, you need to find out from whoever created the file to put that in. Move update seems to be a problem with people populating it in Presort. It should be populated there, and that's why we make it a little bit more difficult for you to update because we want to make sure that that date is right. So you need to make a conscious decision to come in here and make that change. So now that I've made that one change that I had to go into the detail screen to do, or we have a segment editor that would allow you to do that. If, let's say, you had 20 segments, we could update it there. The next thing I want to do is show you how you can update several different fields at the same time. So I go into the Postal One field editor, and one of my problems was that the CRID was missing, the eDoc sender CRID, so I can populate that. This also allows me to come in and just double check that my permit's right. My permit's at +4. If you need to enter a ghost number, you can put in your ghost number, that five-digit ghost number, and set your local permit reference type to virtual. And also, it has your buy for information in here. So if, for example, the mail owner CRID happened to be the exact same CRID as yours, and it wasn't your mailing, then you'd want to make sure that that CRID matches the mail owner. And here you can come in and change it. Now in this case, it actually turns out that this is my mail, and I'm going to fix that CRID. And then we have all of the container record dates. So scheduled induction date, scheduled container ship date, And if I want to come in here and set the mailing date, I can do it all in the same screen. And also fix that USPS pickup field that needs to be set. If you're taking the mail to the USPS, then your USPS, if the USPS is picking up the mail, then the USPS pickup is yes. And obviously that's something we can talk to you more about when you have training on our software. This is something that can be saved so that you can load up a template for future use. Right now I'm not going to save it, I'm just going to click OK. And it goes through and it's updating those fields. And I can double check to make sure that I updated the fields that I wanted to. So for example, the eDoc Center card, I needed to update. The local permit reference type, it didn't change, but because I accidentally checked the box, it left it as it was, which is good news. And then it's changing the dates of my trays, and it's also changing the dates of my pallets. It's setting the USPS pickup field in both the trays and the pallets. So now this job is actually ready to submit to Postal One. So I click the Postal One button on the bottom here, and the plan file is the qualification report that you can submit to Postal One. For example, if you didn't know for sure what's going to go out on a given day, you can first submit the plan file to let them know what's coming, also called an original file. In this case, I'm going to send it all at one time. So since my mailing date's already set, I'm mailing it all on one day. And again, you can do this if you have multiple days as well. It's just you go in, you set your mailing dates before you create your transaction. I finish this up. I save the transaction to where I want my files to be, so when I log on to the Postal One client application, I can upload files. Or let's say you're using the Postal One client batch upload, just putting it into the hot folder so that Postal One can upload it for you. Since so many people have partial mailings, let's go through the process of how you would do it if you don't really know whether your mail is going to go out today or tomorrow. You know what's going. Let's say you know what's going out today, but maybe you don't know if the next set of mail is going out tomorrow, or it could be over more than one day. So in this case, what you can do is first create the plan file. So here, I don't check the box to pay postage. I just create the qualification report, and it also posts the version summary out on the Postal One dashboard. I save this file and upload that to the client, and I make sure that's successful, and then I move on to the next step to pay postage. Clicking on Postal One again, then it automatically knows that I already created the qualification report transaction, so now I'm going to pay postage. I can come in and select just the mail that's going out today. And if I needed to, for example, change the mailing date, I can click on Set Items and change the date just like I could in Assigned Container Miscellany and add any of these other fields as well. So I'm just going to pay for this portion, these particular containers. I'll click OK. And finish up this transaction. And when this is uploaded to Postal One, it's only for that portion of the mail for that day. And then, just so you can see it, what will happen is the next time you go in to pay postage, the only containers you'll see that are left are the ones that weren't mailed yet. And it's just the same process where you take that mail. If you need to, you can set the mailing date. In this case, I've already got the mailing date set, so I'll just move it down. And then finish that up. And now my job is done. The nice thing about when you do partial mailings is if, for example, you need to submit a statement, you need to calculate out postage for Postal One. We release the mail by containers, so you can actually, in Postage DB, create a statement to populate your contingency plan spreadsheet, which is basically putting down who the permit holder is, the permit number, pieces, total postage, and the job ID, so that you don't have to actually wait until Postal One is up to upload your job. You pay your postage, and then you send your job later. So keep that in mind, that when Postal One goes down, which shouldn't be that often, but it happens, you know that you have another option. You can create statements in Postage DB, which basically creates 8125s, 3602s, any kind of postage statement, and some production reports. So I think I've covered everything that really wanted to cover in terms of mail DB. So let's talk about entry DB. Is a way to determine, based on your freight costs, whether or not it's cost effective to go to a destination. And what you can do is you can build scenarios that have freight costs in them and various cost defaults. So you build strategies, you can build cost defaults based on minimum weights, minimum savings, minimum freight. You can ignore different types of facilities. If you didn't wanted a job to just be ASF and NDC, you could ignore all the other facilities. So we try to give you as much flexibility as possible. Your entry list is all the facilities that you're going to, and you can have an entry list that has freight pricing in it. Unfortunately, I don't have one to show you today, but it's basically any of the logistics companies that use Monticello would be able to provide you with an entry list with freight costs so that you can determine whether or not it's cost effective to go to a destination. I just threw in $50 to give us an idea of what you can have happen when you have some freight costs factored in. So here I'll click OK and just click Assign APs, or I can just double click on the job. Either way, I'll click on Assign APs. One of the things that's nice about this is that if you needed to assign only a certain portion of your job, we allow you to select by containers. Or let's say we have a new rate case and it's available in entry DB, then you can analyze with the new postage costs. Here there is no new rate case, so I'll just use current. This co-location discount is when the ASF and NDC and the SCF are all at the exact same address and same dock door. You can take SCF mail to the ASF and NDC, or in periodicals you can take to the ADC and still get the SCF discount. We allow you to claim that additional co-location discount. Here I'll answer yes to that. What we first show you is what job ID you're working with, and you can highlight more than one job. So if you had multiple jobs highlighted, we tell you how many jobs you had highlighted. And then we just give you a summary of the job, and also what scenario you're using, and also what rate case it is. Now, if you didn't do anything with this job, you didn't do any drop shipping, the postage would be $44,837.64. When I received this file, it was already marked with destinations, and that's what this as currently marked is for. It shows you how the file was marked before you ever ran it through entry DB, so that you know what mail is origin, what mail is drop shipping, and you have a breakdown of what your shipping is and your savings is based on the as marked, and how many copies are not getting a discount, how many copies are getting NDC discount, and also SCF discount if it applies. And if you want to actually see the entry points, you can click on As Marked DPs and go in and actually see the actual destinations of the mail. Plus, you can drill in and see information. For example, you're looking at this and you're going, whoa, that's a heck of a lot of copies that are origin. You can go in and view the containers and see, well, is there something that's consistent? Could I possibly be drop shipping some of this mail? The good news is you really don't have to do that. EntryDB can do that for you, and what I'm going to do is now show you what EntryDB did. Based on your scenario that you set up, your strategy, if you have a fuel surcharge, whatever your freight costs, EntryDB looks at that and determines whether or not a pallet or a tray can go to a particular destination. Is it a container level that qualifies for that facility? And is it worth going to that destination? So for example, it could be that sometimes it's worth going to the SCF, but other times it would just be better to go to the NDC. Maybe it's cheaper to go to the NDC. But one of the things that immediately you'll be able to see is that your origin mail went from 25% of your job to 6% of your job. That's a big change. Also, now you've got 90% of your job, or 91% of your job is now drop shipping to ASF and NDCs. Plus, not only do you have copies at the NDC level, but because you have co-located facilities, it's taking the SCF discount as well. And then again, there is one SCF that it's going to determine that there was enough savings to go to that particular destination. And so when I compare the as marked to the results, I'm saving an additional $643 on this job by letting EntryDB assign it based on freight costs. And just like the as marked, you can come in and actually see the various destinations that the mail is going to and be able to drill in to see information about the job. Once you're happy with the job, you can update the database and we'll physically change the container summary records, the container quantity records, any files that need to be changed in order to reflect the new information. We don't change the containerization of the mail, so you don't have to worry about that. The pieces are still intact. All we're doing is shuffling mail from one destination to another. And if you'd like to save your results, the save text allows you to save this screen. And actually what I'll do is, let me close this. So you can save in both text and CSV format your results screen that you're seeing here, which you could then send off to a customer. And we save a listing of the entry points and the shipping costs. This is great if you open it up in we have a CSV file where you can add in additional costs or any additional information you want. Plus, we break down where your shipping costs are. So if you had a 100-weight charge, you would see a 100-weight charge. If it was by per 1,000 copy, you'd see a per 1,000 copy charge. So we try to give you as much detail about a job as possible through these reports. And if you're wondering for each destination what trays or pallets are going, we also have a report for that as well. So I think that pretty much sums up EntryDB, and I'll wait for questions afterwards to come back and maybe show you some other reports. So Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Gene. I appreciate that. That was a great demo. We're going to hand things over to Joe Bailey now, and he's going to talk with Joe Radgowski, Logistics Manager for World Marketing. Thanks, Gene. That was great. We're going to hand things over to Joe Bailey, Director of Monticello Solutions for Satori Software now. He's going to talk with Joe Radgowski, Logistics Manager for World Marketing.
Yes, thank you. I've been having a hard time with my mute button.
Same thing going on here.
Pardon me. Nice job with the demo, Gene. I really appreciate that. The intent here is that if anyone is interested in finding out more about how Post-Presort software works, we'd be glad to set up a one-on-one, more detailed demo with you individually. And what you can do is send us a mail.dat file of one of your actual jobs, and we can show you the data that's actually in your file in a one-on-one demo. So you'll see how to get in touch with us at the end of the presentation here. So, Joe Radgowski,
hi.
Tell us a little bit about World Marketing and what you guys specialize in.
Hi, yeah, this is Joe Radgowski. We've been, World Marketing Atlanta has been around since 1954, so we've seen a lot of new technologies coming, being implemented over the years, ranging anywhere from zip codes to PostNet barcodes to current IMB barcodes. We've been working, we have operations, we have IT department that does our data processing and pre-sort and database solutions, and our operations department is also capable of doing imaging, printing, bindery, inserting, tabbing, inkjetting, We have logistics operations, which is my personal responsibility. That deals with drop shipments, postage payment, mail tracking services, such as Inside Track, or where you track the mail pieces throughout the post office. And we have warehouse and fulfillment operations, also to support clients that require shipping of small parcels and stuff of that nature. I've been with the company for about 21 years. I've seen a lot of changes over those time frames. Not the zip code thing, not the zip code implementations. That was a little bit further before my time. But more importantly, some of the new technologies that have been, especially since 2008, or IMB barcodes and mail.dat files and all of that. My responsibilities are logistics, postage payment, implementing new USPS technologies such as IMB, some of the incentive programs that they work on. We're moving towards, we are a full-service mailer, and we're working towards seamless and e-induction on our end also. So all of these tools are very helpful to get to those goals and make things more efficient.
Oh, great. So which of our Post-Presort products do you currently use?
We have a pretty large suite of other products, but mostly what we deal with work with is MailDB, which Gene showed, PostageDB, which is your postage reports, and your statements, your 8125s, a lot of helpful little reports that come in handy when you're doing some planning. EntryDB, which Gene has showed, and we also actively use a remote label printer for storing, and when you image your tray tags and your pallet flags, you can keep a copy of them electronically, so if you have to go back and reprint something, let's say something gets damaged, you can go back and reprint them relatively quickly.
Gotcha. And was there a specific problem or an initiative that caused you to seek out a Post-Presort product?
Yeah, back the foresight of some of our previous leaders, we were starting to use Post-Presort software back in 1999. That's when we first started with it. And we were looking at efficiencies regarding trying to get away from the paper-driven 8125s, away from the paper postage statements and all of that. But more recently, when full service implementation was our primary initiative to deal with, or to go to Post-Presort solution, that would be a cost-effective platform, not just for World Marketing Atlanta. We have about 4 or 5 plants. We have 4 plants across the country now. But it provided a cost-effective solution for all 4 plants, so we're all on the same platform, and allow us to reduce our manpower and be in line with a tool that would be in line with the future expectations of full service and seamless and e-induction, all of those things, by capitalizing on mail.dat files or the technology of mail.dat files. The recession of 2008 also meant we had to reduce our cost of processing these postage statements and reducing manpower so we can actually be in operations, an efficient operation, and to get away from all that paper pushing that we have been so attuned to or used to since I've started from a long time ago.
Got it. So what steps did you take to identify which would be the best Post-Presort software solution for you?
Okay. First step was we had to identify what we needed to be full service compliant. What was the software requirements, the e-doc submission aspect of it, all the ability to be able to use the software effectively. We also looked at how we could better integrate electronically with our logistics centers. A lot of things that we've seen in our lifetime, we're pushing more and more of our day-to-day tasks to electronic EDI or electronic distribution of data that allows us to communicate effectively with our vendors, with our transportation vendors, with the post office and stuff of that nature. So how can the software package help us integrate well with our logistics vendors and even with the post office? We looked at what gains we could get from the automation tools the software could provide. There are things that Monticello offers, such as import robots, where you can actually modify mail.dat files and automatically, upon importing them. So it doesn't take a person to click a button to transfer a file and bring it into the system. It would automatically just come into the system, update a lot of these fields that we'd like the mailer ID for the e-doc submitter and stuff of that nature, or if you have a consistent permit, what permit you're using. So these fields are time savers, and it doesn't allow us to, or doesn't require us to have hands-on importation or some field modifications. We tested how easy it was to use the software. Is it really difficult to use the software, or somebody who's used to have decent computer skills can actually go in and understand where to click, what field it modifies, and is it easy to read and understand that. Mailing industry has gotten more complicated over the years, and what has happened is you have to understand, oh, it's a mail.dat file. Well, if we change the mailing date, that's a fairly understandable thing. But what is a MID? What is a CRID? And what do they really mean? And where do we need to change them? It has to be easy for people to understand and change it in the system versus, going through some complicated process to be able to update the files. The last thing we looked at was what's cost-benefit software, or cost-benefit in the multi-plant environment, which I think I mentioned before, because we have 4 plants. Can we use the same platform across across our network and all 4 plants? And there's another advantage to that is that I have counterparts in all 4 plants. We do certain things in Atlanta, but other plants may not do that. But they may be required in the future, or they come across a situation that that they're not used to, but I do it all the time. So what this allows us to actually look at other people's plants, and we can actually see, oh, that's a simple solution. I do this all the time, and I can actually train people or help them resolve some of their issues that seem daunting. So it allows us to capitalize on our manpower a little bit more effectively. So those are some of the factors that we did to see what the software can provide and what was our best solution to the situation that we were facing.
Got it. Thanks. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how the Post-Presort software's solution that you have helps you overcome your challenges in your mailings.
Okay. As Gene has mentioned and showed in the demonstration, one, we're updating mail.data files is critical. Either it's a date, a CRID, a MID, which are mailer IDs, customer reference IDs, NCOA dates, stuff of that nature. You get mail.dat files from across the world. At least you may get mail.dat files from across the world. What happens is not all the dates may be updated properly, or not all the fields are updated. So being able to do correct P specifications, being able to update some of the more important data that's required by the post office. So it's much easier to just update that, because if you had paper copies, you wouldn't be able to update them that readily. It provides a platform to allow us to communicate with Postal One. Okay, upload the files, these documents. It's a lot easier. Just click a button, export it, and just put it into the hot folder upload. Or if you wanted to actually just manually upload it, you can go to the Postal One upload site, MDR client, I think it's called, to just upload it into Postal One. This Monticello goes ahead and allows you to create the plan and pay files, and you can just upload the stuff, and it's not keying stuff into the Postal Wizard. It's not creating a paper statement, although you still have those options. It makes it a lot more efficient. It saves us time with the Postal One pre-verification report, as Gene showed. If you're going to upload a file to Postal One, you don't want to necessarily wait for it to process and find out you have an error when you're done with it. You want to be able to check check your files to see if they're clean and acceptable for Postal One up front and correct those issues. Let's say you're missing a date, or you're missing a CRID, or you're missing a permit. There's a lot of files. You can process a lot of files in a day. So what will happen is that you want to find these items before you upload them to Postal One and come back, and it comes back with an error. Oh wait, you're missing a mailing date. It's like, okay. The pre-verification process allows you to address those issues up front and saves you a lot of time in terms of wait time in terms of uploading files. Freight quotes in terms of EntryDB. It's a fast-paced world we live in. I was used to send out quotes. It took 24 hours for my freight companies to come back with quotes from that standpoint. Now I can just basically go to EntryDB, load the template that freight vendors given us, and boom, I got a freight quote right there. I can turn it in a matter of minutes versus waiting 24 hours for a quote. And I can also run multiple quotes. If I have multiple templates for freight costs, I have, let's say, from one vendor, another from another vendor, I can do a cost comparison relatively quickly. Which is the better vendor, or which areas there are better service, you get better cost service out of. So it has that flexibility from that standpoint. The other, and this is kind of a more esoteric point from that perspective, it keeps us current with the dynamic world of mailings. Things are changing every 6 months for the post office with updates from Postal One. Being out there and having the software allows us to, A, keep up with them, because these changes are pretty widespread, and there's hard to keep all the fingers in everything that goes on out there. And on top of it, they keep changing and they keep rolling back dates. So what happens is you got to keep up and keep current with these changes. Working with Monticello, allows us to keep our mailing list up to date. We can keep up with all the different changes in the mail.dat files. I mean, when I started, it was, what, 8-1 or earlier than that with the mail.dat version. So we're now up to 14-1. We're going to be rolling into 14-2. All of these changes are moving forward, and they keep coming faster and faster. Having Monticello allows us to keep up to date with all of these requirements and standards. So they're a very good support team from that standpoint, because a lot of times these changes are rather significant and can hold up mailings if you don't want to, if you're not keeping up to speed with them. So,
gotcha. Let's talk about some of the business-related benefits. Can you quantify at all how much money you've saved or time you've saved?
I wasn't involved directly with the time studies on these jobs. When we went to Monticello, it was more of a corporate level decision, and in terms of the pricing, that was also part of the decision. So I was more on the end of implementing and rolling out the program to make sure it worked. To put things in perspective, I was given, like beginning of March, I was told we're going to be rolling out by beginning of April. We're going to implement a new piece of software for all of our postage payment. It was like, great, 30 days, wonderful. And the good news is it worked great. Had great support from the support team at Monticello to get this rolled out. It was a bit daunting for a 30-day rollout, and it worked fine for all the plans from that standpoint. We're looking at a totally different process in how we were doing, mail.dat files, uploading to Postal One, testing all of that. We were totally paper-driven prior to this. We were able to actually cut a position out because we're doing electronic documentation. We were able to get rid of all the paper 8125s. Well, that was also part of a different program also. But it saved us at least one piece, in my operation, at least one person in terms of manpower, which is helpful in terms of cost and budgeting. We're capable also of uploading. It allows us to manage our workload better, because we can upload some of these, let's say, just the plan files ahead of schedule, or even sometimes the pay files ahead of schedule if we push the date out. Because a lot of our mail, let's say, goes on beginning of the month, let's say the 1st, the week before or a couple of days before, we can start uploading these files and getting them done and up there, and they stay out in Postal One, and then the date rolls around that we actually mail, and their DMUs will take the money out then. So we can better balance our workload through these items.
So how's your experience been with our customer support?
I've been very happy with the customer support. Gene is very helpful. They keep up to date with what's going on in the world, which is very important. Sometimes when Postal One new releases come out, some weird things start happening, and it's like, okay, what's going on? Why are we getting failures? This, that, the next thing. Usually they're very easy to contact via email and or phone call from that standpoint. We are one entity in the world that's mailing. Okay, so if we're having opportunities with things going through Postal One, we're probably not the only people dealing with that. Or sometimes we're just the first group, because being on the East Coast, we come across it first. They are a good sounding board when we get errors from Postal One and say maybe it's something unusual that's happening. We will be able to say, hey, I'm getting this weird error, and they've seen it before. And, oh, yeah, it's a quick fix. This is what you need to do. The other aspect of it is I don't always use all the Monticello functions all the time. Like, there's certain aspects of the shortage and spoilage side that we do shortages, we do occasionally do spoilage, but we do shortages here, and we do it in a specific way. Occasionally it's required we come across a client that's very specific in how they want to do their spoilage. And what will happen is I'll have to go ask Jean, hey, how does this work? I forgot. I haven't done it in a year or so. And she's very helpful. She's very supportive from that standpoint. She'll help, hey, this is the process. You need to go through these steps, and that's it. And I've had very positive feedback, or very positive response from the help desk.
Thank you. And I know that World Marketing is certainly what we would consider to be a fairly large volume mailer. Some of the folks on the call today might be more on the medium to small mail volume side. And I wonder if you can give any tips on how can maybe a smaller organization cost justify Post-Presort software.
Okay. The first one would be capitalize on your automation, okay, which allows you to automate and bring in your mail.dat files into the into your Monticello without having human interface. You just pop your mail.dat file after pre-sort into a hot file, and it will automatically import. That robot that imports, that can do the modifications, any special modifications you want to deal with, be it mailer crids or post permits and stuff of that nature, or mail dates if you want to put that in there too. That will help you save right there. The other aspect is a pre-validation tool. Check your files before you try to even upload them. Make sure everything's in place where it needs to be. That saves us a lot of time in terms, because the Postal One upload process may not always be the fastest, and due to business volumes, it allows you to get the things done and corrections out of the way before you spend time trying to upload the file. It allows you to keep compliant with current postage changes, postal regulations and changes, because it's very important to keep that up to speed, especially, I mean, there's always something new and different coming in. It's so dynamic. It allows you, you may come across situations where you have to keep up with, there's some change where there's a new rollout in the beginning of the year about, let's say, something that's changed in postage. It allows you to keep up with that, so when it comes to presenting a mailing, you have the knowledge already in place that you say, hey, no, this is a new way the post office is doing it, this rate change or something of that nature, or let's say FSS sorts. That alone this past January was, kind of or actually it was later in January, but kind of nerve-wracking. With using Monticello, we were able to keep current relatively easily with the FSS changes, and allowed us to actually help our DMUs go through the verification process, because everybody was learning something new regarding that. And these tools, these things, even for small mail, saves your resources, human resources, a lot of time to be able to keep up with that standpoint.
Great. Any other tips you have for anybody that's considering Post-Presort software?
Yeah. See what the software can do for you to make your operations more efficient. Okay. And what that means is Monticello has a bunch of different reports that are available that comes in handy for planning, in terms of freight planning if you're doing that aspect, quoting from that standpoint, as from the entry DP, capital, so these reports, there's actually certain other reports out of Monticello on the postage DP side that allows you to summarize your mailings. I forget the number of the report that it comes out, but to summarize your mailings for a given day, you run your postage report that allows you to go back and cross-reference what postage you spent on which accounts. It comes out, you can put it in an Excel file, you can export it in CSV, put it in an Excel file, and boom, you have, hey, a quick tool to reconcile your account usage, your postage usage versus what comes out of Postal One versus what accounting has. All of these come in handy when you can they can save some time. They can allow you better have planning tools in terms of production. If you want a mail date, you can put your mail dates in the items and pump out a report that helps you. We have a report that helps us, tells us what destinations, based on when we plan to mail them, has to be run first. And then we turn that over to production, and then production goes ahead and says, okay, we need to organize our entry points and run them in the sequence. Like I say, the using on the robots helps us keep up with all of the, helps us reduce labor from that standpoint. The comparative freight cost saves us time, because we don't have to wait for quotes to come back, and we can keep our clients happy by giving a number relatively quickly. And the multiple, if you have multiple mailing facilities, modest mailers may not have that scenario. It could be a single source solution to manage multiple plants. Allows better support, interplant support from that standing.
Good deal. So in the interest of time, I think we have a few minutes left here where we can go to the Q&A portion of it. So I'll turn it back over to Rob.
Thank you, Joe. We've got a couple of good questions here. I think these are a mix for the two Joes, so I'll go ahead and read them off, and you can decide who's going to answer them. Is it possible to alter the tray type using Monticello? Sometimes we have a small enough amount of EMM-size pieces to fit into an MM tray. We will use the smaller tray to save space in GMPCs or pallets.
The answer is yes. You can change the handling unit type. We have all of the different values available that you can just pick from the value list that we show when we present the edit screen for that. So you can do that on a container-by-container basis. So it might be that some of the containers need to be changed while others don't. Joe Radgowski, have you ever had to do that?
Yeah, actually that's one of those pre-sort things that sometimes the P-specs come out wrong, or somewhere in the pre-sort, something they set up the wrong tray type in the pre-sort, and it's been pre-sorted to EMM trays, and it should be 1-foot trays and mm trays. So yes, we have use that functionality on occasion, and it comes in handy because honestly, when it comes down to it, the DMUs will give us problems saying, hey, you got the wrong tray type here, you need to have the correct one. So yeah, we do use that functionality, and it's important in mail acceptance.
Next question, Joe Bailey, I think this is probably directed at you. It is the Post-Presort software available as an add-on to the bulk mail business?
Certainly is. So we have customers, we have folks on today who either have the bulk mailer pre-sort tools or the Satori pre-sort tools. So everyone here should have the ability to create mail.dat files out of their pre-sort solution, whichever one it is. And we can work in conjunction as an add-on to whichever pre-sort solution you have.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Next question is, what are the unique challenges in your mailing operations? For example, rising costs, labor-intensive tasks, no automation, staff overload, industry or postal compliance issues, too many projects, too many processing steps, rapidly growing business, or very complex sorts?
Well, I'll take that one. The change, all of the above is pretty much what's happening because as of like 2008, we had to actually reduce our manpower. And Monticello, because of the recession, everybody's budgets got cut. Monticello allowed us to reduce our staffing from that standpoint because of some of the automation tools that we had in place. And it allowed us also to improve our shipping operations. There are a lot of functionalities regarding the post office. A lot of advantages you can take it. You can use if using eDoc and using Monticello to integrate with Postal One. But you can also gain some advantages working with your vendors, such as it's a combination of the post office and your vendors, such as things like the Dismiss program, which is a drop shipment management system program. If you can get have a vendor that handles that, you can get approved by the post office, it allows you to save a lot of space and time in how you handle your mail. Monticello was a key stepping stone to be able to get to that point, okay, because it provided all the eDoc capabilities. Moving towards full service. Full service in and of itself is very important because, you talk about the loss of the discount of full service. At the beginning of this year, they were talking about the loss of automation discount, which is still a potential out there in this industry, but the future will tell us more about that. But more importantly, you can take advantage of, with full service, you can take advantage of some of these other programs that the post office offers, such as a lot of the incentive programs are based off of participating in full service properly. A lot of the Mail Anywhere program is very important. We're dealing with a lot of Mail Anywheres where a permit may be held in, let's say, Wisconsin. Traditionally, we'd have to ship the mail up to Wisconsin to be verified and paid for. With a Mail Anywhere environment, if you're part of a full-service environment and use eDoc and electronic documentation, it allows you to verify the mail in Atlanta and then distribute it out. That saves a truckload of mail going up there. It saves any problems, let's say, at the verification end, because you're verifying at another DMU or another plant or a BMEU from that standpoint. You can verify with Mail Anywhere. You can verify it in your plant as long as you're full service certified. There are a couple of requirements, but the critical aspect is full service, and you have to present electronic documentation, eDoc, and upload the files into Postal One. There are a couple other requirements, but that saves us a lot of time and allows us to be more flexible for our clients in that perspective, and saves money and time in the long run. So those are some of the unique challenges. I wouldn't call those challenges. I call them opportunities from that standpoint because it allows us to grow. And I foresee that the post office is going to give you more opportunities regarding that aspect and be more flexible, like pay anywhere and stuff of that nature, although I'm not actually sure that would integrate with Monticello from that standpoint. Mail.dat files, that technology has been around for a while. Being able to leverage that with our vendors, with our own internal operations, from production scheduling and that standpoint, and with the post office has saved us a lot of time and resources, manpower to be able to go ahead and ship more mail with less effort. So these are some of the things that helped us by using Monticello and moving forward in this brave new world of eDoc and all of those things.
I'd like to mention here that we can still accept questions via the box on the right-hand side of the screen. A continuation on that question, Joe, is since you are obviously full-service compliant, what was the process like to get there?
From what I understand, all right, we were on the cutting edge of this. the standpoint, we started back in 2008. The first step would be create unique IMB barcodes on the mail pieces, which was more of a production question or a production operation. Hey, do you have inkjet machines that can do this, or imaging machines that can do this? The other aspect is making sure we're establishing a database structure that allows you to keep your barcodes, your piece barcodes, unique for 45 days. Next step was to work with our IT department to create mail.dat files that could be least amount of updating to go up to be uploaded into Postal One. Well, those dynamics have changed since 2008. It's been a few years. And what has happened is that some of those, we have templates, they work, but a lot of those responsibilities have now been shifted onto the logistics department. So we have to make sure all the MIDs and the mailer IDs on it and the customer reference IDs are correct. We mow in and make sure we have more quality steps in place to make sure we are full service compliant at our end. Because also sometimes we get files from the outside world that we don't process, and we need to make sure we do QA aspects. The editors that Jean was showing help us process that, plus some of the templates. Like she said, you could load a template in and say, populate these certain Postal One fields with certain set data. That saves us a lot of time. TEM verification process back in 2008 was a little bit difficult, or a little bit more challenging, because you had to have different scenarios. You had to upload, you save these changes. Working with the Monticello team, we would end up going. They walked us through the process and how to set these TEM environments and TEM test files to upload, and we would upload those into the TEM environment. And we finally got the blessing from the post office. You can do this properly. You can upload these properly into the Postal One environment, so you can go ahead and start using Postal One. Since then, we've been basically trying to keep up, with all the different changes in full service compliance. We've actually been doing pretty well. The scorecard, I'm not familiar, people may not be familiar with it, but it's one of the other areas that I'm in responsibility is part of full service is getting the feedback from the post office. The scorecard that we've been running, we've actually been running really well, where we've actually only have a few errors now and then, like one error per month in terms of the scorecard, and occasionally it's like a seed name that gets duplicated. So by using Monticello at the front end of the business, when we started doing full service, going through the TEM testing environment, they were very helpful. The Monticello's help desk was very helpful getting us pointed in the right directions where we need to fix things and where we need to go. As time gone on, as I understand, it's a lot easier to qualify now for full service. So I haven't had to go through that process, repeat the process anytime recently. So does that answer what you're looking for?
Absolutely. Once is enough, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, just wait till we get through Seamless. That's going to be the fun part next.
So this next question is for Joe Bailey. Joe, is the remote label printing for placards and an additional fee, or does it come standard?
We license the software in modules, so you can get the modules that you need and not have to pay for all of the functionality if you don't need it. The main module that is called MailDB, and that product can produce pallet placards as part of the initial investment. We also have, though, a module called PalletDB, which can let you create pallets from trays or sacks, and that, of course, can also help you create pallet placards. In addition to creating the placards, we can actually create the unique intelligent mail barcodes for the placards, and we can keep those unique, keeping track across any of the MIDs that you use.
Great, and I think we're back to Joe Radgowski with the next question. How does pre-validation help with Postal One?
Pre-validation helps with Postal One because it identifies the gaps in your mail.dat file before you even try to upload it. That's the important aspect of it right there. Especially if you got files that like over 1 million some odd pieces, what you end up having is you create the file to upload your plan file. If you go ahead and do pre-validation, you identify your problems, correct those dates, you're missing NCOA information or create customer reference IDs, or sometimes your pallets have barcode issues in terms of, like Joe was saying, your IMB barcodes may not be correct on your pallets. You identify those problems up front before you try to upload the plan file to Postal One, because you can try to upload the file to Postal One and then it comes back and give you a whole list of errors, which those errors can be rather cryptic, to be totally serious, and take some research to do that. within the Monticello environment, they're pretty straightforward about what they, hey, this is your file, this is your field, this is what needs to be, it's missing, or it isn't, let's say you typed in the date wrong or something that weird like that. So you want to take advantage of that because it saves you a lot of time. People are human. They make mistakes in when they type things in wrong or something of that nature, and you want to identify those gaps before you even try to upload files to Postal One. Once you get into the Postal One environment, you got a whole totally different world that you got to be working on and making sure you got things. Sometimes it's not so easy. All right. Over the years, it's gotten easier, but sometimes it's not so easy to figure out exactly what Postal One is saying with their errors.
Thanks, Joe. I want to mention here that we have run a little over our 60 minutes, but we're continuing to get some good questions. So if the speakers can remain with us, we'll continue to ask some questions and get some answers. Next one, Joe Bailey. I suspect this is for you. I am a small business that rarely processes over 10,000 pieces. Would the Post-Presort software be good for us, or is it geared towards bigger companies?
I don't think that it's really mail volume specific. It's really going to be up to the individual company as to how much time and how much more efficient they're going to be by handling files using Post-Presort software versus not. If all of the jobs that you process out of your Presort software are 100% correct all the time, you don't do partial releases. You always mail the entire job on the same day. And when you submit the data into Postal One, nothing needs to be changed or updated, then you really don't need Post-Presort software. Depending on how often you need to make changes and how difficult it is to make those changes without Post-Presort software, that would be where you'd see whether or not it's beneficial to you or not. So if someone with smaller mailing volumes wants us to take a look at their files and show them the pre-validation and what fields might be missing and that kind of thing, we'd be glad to do that, and you'll be able to see for yourself whether or not it really is cost effective.
Thanks, Joe. Kind of a three-part question for Joe Radgowski. I'll ask all three parts, Joe, and then let you run with it. Do you still produce paper statements? Do you do partial releases? And do you need to make corrections to piece weights, mailing dates, or other information for your mailings?
So let's see, it was paper statements first?
Correct.
Only if Postal One goes down. Then we have the contingency plan that we have to do that, and we can turn in a paper statement as a kind of a placeholder saying we plan to pay this money, or we plan to pay for this postage. But we don't have to produce a paper statement at all. We don't produce, so we can just go ahead and send everything in electronically and go with that. Now, we recently had a scenario where we were helping out another mailer that actually kind of opened my eyes to this environment because I've been working with this stuff for 14 years. And it's kind of scary because they came in with paper statements. It's like, well, what happens when you have to change this, or you're short, or this, that, the next thing? And it's just, you learn to appreciate, or using the software, you learn to appreciate it. Say, hey, it's a lot easier to update things, such as if the piece weight's wrong. I mean, let's say it's half the weight or twice the weight. You can actually go into Monticello. Yes, we do update piece weights. Did I skip this third question? But we also, on the other side of that, is more importantly, if anything, is the piece weight, more than piece weight's important, but the thickness of the mail piece. We often come across mailings that we have mail pieces that are pre-sorted the wrong thickness. Now, and if it's too thick and it doesn't fit into a tray, you end up going into the world of creating overflow trays or sibling containers. Monticello has the ability to go into sibling containers and create sibling containers. In a full-service environment, it gets a lot more complicated because the unique barcode tray, unique tray barcodes has to be accounted for. But what happens is Monticello has all of those tools built into it that allows you to create sibling trays and make those adjustments, and you can keep going and you keep mailing, and it's not like a total end of the world or a full-service environment. You can keep going regarding that issue. And what was the third question?
The third question was related to spoilage and how you handle that.
Yeah, spoilage, mostly shortages is what we deal with, is shortages. Spoilages we have on occasion, so there are a couple of ways of dealing. You would identify the individual mail pieces. You can either identify them as by the barcode or the mail piece, and then you can actually get like a CSV file. You can take them out. Or if you have the time, you can actually physically mark them in the file. But I suggest using something that can create a CSV file from all your spoilages if you can capture that information, which may be difficult because depending on your process, the mail pieces might get destroyed in the process of like addressing. But if you can identify your spoilage by the individual barcode, the unique IMD, you can actually go in and apply a CSV file against the file, against your mailing file, and deduct those pieces marked as spoilage, either to be paid for later at some other time, or just completely say they're spoilage and they're destroyed, and we're never going to pay them. Don't pay postage. We're not going to mail them. The shortage side of it, 9 times out of 10, if we're short, the way our production work will end up being is like, oh, we're short these trays, and you can go in and if you short a tray, it's a lot easier to mark a tray short than to go and try to get the individual mail pieces that we're actually short. So let's say I'm short 2 or 3 trays off the mailing or a complete pallet. And depending on what you plan to do later with that mail, if you're going to expect more pieces to come in, you can separate those trays off or that pallet or that destination and say, I'm going to pay for those later. Or you can just mark them completely short and say, I'm never going to pay for these. Don't ever pay postage on these. So that the Monticello has the functionalities of being able to say, I'm not going to pay for this at all, or I'm going to just pay for a partial, and I'll make them up later, and you could set dates later for those pieces that when they do finally come in. So it does handle spoilage and shortage relatively easily and relatively quick and efficiently because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The DMUs have to close out the trucks. You got to be quick with this stuff, and it's one of the advantages of using electronic documentation. You just got to capture the information and apply it to it.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to everyone for attending the Satori software webinar, World Marketing Cuts Postage Costs and Improves Mailing Efficiency. Today our guest speaker has been Joe Radgowski, Logistics Manager from World Marketing. Thank you for attending, Joe. Appreciate you chatting with us. And from Satori Software, we've been speaking with Joe Bailey, the Director of Monticello Solutions. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you. Appreciate you coming by. And finally, Gene Renier, Solutions Engineer for Satori Software. I'd like to remind everyone that we've got an upcoming webinar, Postal Update, Upcoming Roadmap Items and Changes. It's going to be July 10th at 11 a.m. We'd like to invite everybody to attend that. This webinar has been produced by Jerisa Chang for Satori Software. I'm Rob Perrin, the Director of Technical Services. Once again, thank you for attending our webinar.